Welcome to the Explainer. Look, if you're completely exhausted by that traditional financial advice, you know the one. Pinch your pennies, save diligently, and wait 40 painful years just to finally enjoy your retirement, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're tearing up that old playbook. We're going to map out a dynamic, totally accelerated path to seven figures using the exact strategies from entrepreneurs and financial experts who have literally done it. So I want to start off by posing a very direct question to you. How long are you willing to wait to get rich? Seriously, think about it. Author Michael Masterson actually used to ask this exact question at his seminars. He'd ask the audience for a show of hands, and guess what? Almost nobody raises their hand for 30 or 40 years. I mean, of course not. We all want financial independence, but we want it while we still have the youth and the energy to actually go out and enjoy it. Well, when Masterson kept probing his audiences, he found this really fascinating sweet spot. It turns out the time frame most ambitious people are actually willing to sprint for is just 7 years. So that right there is the core premise of our framework today. Not 40 years, just 7. We're going to dive into the exact mechanics of achieving a 7-figure net worth in under a decade. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. Today we're covering 5 key steps. 1. The accelerated wealth journey. 2. Ladders of wealth creation. 3. Moving between the ladders. 4. Mastering asymmetric risk. And 5. The emotional challenge. All right, let's kick things off with step 1, the accelerated wealth journey. So the foundational psychology and really the raw earning power required to build a fortune in a compressed timeline is heavily anchored by Michael Masterson's book, 7 Years to 7 Figures. Think about it this way. If you make an above-average salary, let's say $70,000 a year, and you save 10% of it, getting a standard 6% return on your investment is literally never going to get you to $1 million in 7 years. The math simply doesn't work. Masterson realized that to compress 40 years of wealth building down to just 7, you cannot just sit back and rely on passive saving. You have to radically, aggressively increase your income. But how exactly do you do that? Well, it all starts with singular focus. Masterson shares this hilarious but honestly super profound realization from a Dale Carnegie course he took. He was asked to pick his absolute #1 life goal. At first, he wanted to be a writer, maybe a teacher, a humanitarian, but he quickly realized having way too many goals practically guarantees failure. So as he walked up to the podium, he kind of panicked and just blurted out, "Rich guy," reasoning he could always just give the money away later if he wanted to be a humanitarian. The crucial takeaway here is that focusing relentlessly on wealth as your priority #1 is the ultimate catalyst. It acts like a compass, clarifying every single career and business decision you make from here on out. Moving right along to step 2, ladders of wealth creation. Okay, so now that we have the mindset locked in, let's get into the actual mechanics of scaling your value. We're drawing this from the brilliant business philosophies of software founder Nathan Barry. Barry visualizes income generation as a series of distinct ladders. Step 1 is the most common, trading time for money, like an hourly wage or a standard salary. Step 2 is running your own service business. You capture way more of the value you create, but you're still basically trading time. Then there's step 3, productized services, where you offer a fixed scope for a fixed price, finally decoupling your income from strict hourly tracking. And at the top, step 4 is selling products. This is where you build something once and sell it infinitely. Take a quick second right now to figure out which ladder you're currently standing on. Barry himself walked this exact path, going from trading his time for minimum wage at Wendy's all the way up to owning ConvertKit, which is a massive software product company. Now notice the really stark contrast between how these different ladders actually reward you. On the left side, traditional jobs offer what we call stair-step income. You get a small raise every few years. It's safe, sure, but it is fundamentally limited by the hours in your day. But on the right side, the higher ladders, like selling software or digital products, offer exponential income. Each new sale comes easier than the last, and the growth potential is basically limitless. To actually hit 7 figures in just 7 years, you eventually have to jump over to that right side and go all in on exponential income. Which brings us perfectly to step 3, moving between the ladders. Look, acknowledging that the transition between these wealth stages isn't some perfect fairy tale is your next major reality check. Jumping ladders requires specific strategies and honestly a whole lot of grit. You see, when you jump up to a higher ladder, your income almost always drops initially. Nathan Barry calls this the dip. It's a real thing. He literally dropped from making $250,000 a year selling ebooks down to almost nothing when he decided to switch gears and start his software company. Get this, it took him 5 agonizing years to hit that $250,000 peak again. But because he was finally on an exponential ladder, once he recovered, his income rocketed past anything he ever could have achieved on that previous rung. You have to be totally prepared to endure the dip. So how exactly do you survive the dip? Well, you fund it with the extra money you make from your current ladder. Barry tells this amazing story about an Uber driver who was making great side hustle cash, but his grand plan was to spend it all on a fancy new DJI drone and a home theater speaker. Look, I get it. Toys are fun, but if you want to seriously compress your wealth timeline, every single extra dollar and extra hour needs to be reinvested into new skills, assets, or your next business venture. Don't buy a drone, buy your ticket to the next wealth ladder. All right, on to step 4, mastering asymmetric risk. So once you climbed those ladders and generated some serious capital, how do you actually protect it and multiply it safely? The ultimate secret weapon of the wealthy is this concept called asymmetric risk. Basically, this simply means structuring your investments so that the potential upside wildly outpaces the possible downside. It's taking a risk, yeah, but with a massive safety net. You risk a small, totally manageable amount of capital for the chance of literal life-changing gains. You never, ever bet the farm. Let's look at how this actually plays out in the real world with a few practical investment vehicles. Think about it. A small, very calculated buy-in to crypto or early-stage startups could absolutely go to zero, but if it hits, it scales exponentially. Putting modest investments into distressed real estate or low-cost stock options works exactly the same way. You cap your losses right at your initial small investment, but your gains are theoretically unlimited. This is exactly how you accelerate a portfolio's growth without lying awake losing sleep every night. But the big question is, how much should you actually allocate to these aggressive plays? Bonfire Financial provides this fantastic framework for us. Even the most aggressive investors generally cap this at around 10 to 20% of their total portfolio. The golden rule here is strictly non-negotiable. Never risk more than you are willing to completely lose. As your overall wealth grows, the actual dollar amount in this bucket grows with it, giving you bigger absolute returns, even while keeping the percentage entirely safe and relatively small. And that brings us to our final step. Step 5, the emotional challenge. You know, understanding all this math intellectually is usually the easy part. Executing it emotionally is where it gets tough. This quote right here from one of Bonfire's clients delivers a really powerful emotional punch. Behavioral finance tells us that losses hurt twice as much as gains feel good. All those online risk tolerance quizzes, they completely fail because they're based purely on logic. You might think you have a high tolerance for risk, but seeing a $100,000 loss on your bank statement in stark black and white, well, that throws all logic straight out the window. If you want to succeed in asymmetric investing, you absolutely must conquer this psychological hurdle and stick to your plan when the market inevitably tests you. Okay, let's bring this all together. Distilling it down from our 3 sources today, here is your rapid-fire summary to hit 7 figures. First, ruthlessly reinvest your extra money and time into new skills, not shiny new gadgets. Second, embrace asymmetric risk, but don't get greedy and try to chase past winners. Third, as you climb those ladders towards selling products, build an audience to scale your income exponentially. And finally, focus relentlessly on wealth as your absolute primary goal so you don't get distracted by the noise. I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to take away from today's explainer. Take a hard look at your life right now. What exact rung of the income ladder are you currently standing on? And more importantly, what is the next calculated asymmetric bet you need to make to jump up to the next level? Remember, the 7-year clock starts the very moment you make that decision. So get out there and start